In occasione dell'inaugurazione della 21ª edizione delle Luci d'artista di Torino, ci troviamo insieme all'artista tedesco Tobias Rehberger, autore della luce Mein Un, installata nel cortile della scuola elementare Carlo Collodi. Ci facciamo raccontare dall'artista come è nata l'idea dell'opera, che cosa vuole trasmettere e comunicare al visitatore attraverso di essa e in che modo si contestualizza nell'ambito del progetto Luci d'artista.
The basic idea of the work, I think, is the idea that on one hand you can see something without knowledge, and then you can have maybe just a pure aesthetic impression or an emotional impression. But then if you are able to read something, and I think that's a general, that's something very general about like how do you look at art, that if you know how to read something and you have a certain kind of knowledge, it could be something completely else. In this case, what you see is just an abstract installation of rings and lines that are lit at some points, and at other points they are turned off. And if you don't know how else you could deal with that installation, you could enjoy it as well as a kind of abstract and purely aesthetic experience. But if you know that there's something else behind it, and if you have a certain knowledge about, in this case of course about my work, then you can read it suddenly in a completely different context, which is suddenly a functional object, which is only secondarily aesthetic, because in this case you can read it as a clock and you can actually read the time from it, but only if you come or if you have a certain pre-knowledge of the work, or if you have enough energy and time and patience to observe it for a long time. Maybe you can find it out by yourself. But I think the general contrast in it, and I think that's something very important if you look at art in general, is, you know, like what kind of setup you bring to the work. And in the moment you understand that how important that is, I think you can have a completely different view on all art, you know. And I think the major point is not just, it's almost like a 50-50, you know. Something's brought from the art, but something is brought also from the viewer. And you can only read what you bring, you know. You can only make the connections between what you see and what you have in mind already if you bring something. And I think on one hand is specifically a work that is also talking about like public sculpture, you know, like the term drop sculpture, where like certain kind of abstract work is just like put somewhere in the city and nobody really knows how to deal with it, because of course a public art is something that confronts a lot of people who have really no knowledge of art. You know, like people who go to the museum, they have some idea maybe, or at least they have a desire or an expectation what's going to happen when they go to the museum. But public art is something like everybody runs into it, whether you're interested or not. And I think, and at that moment is even more important, this question of how you bring to it and what public art can do for everybody. And I think the work is a clock and is an abstract, autonomous sculpture, is a clock, but it's also basically talking about this issue.